Alright, peoples, so this is Ross, and today we're going to do a little bit of a different thing. We're going to do a little bit of a series that's going to start from today. We're going to do this every week, I think. We're going to maybe do this every other week, every week. Essentially where I am going to be answering your guys' questions. It's really that simple. Maybe I have an announcement to make, just in general news about what's going on with the channel, things that have been happening. Maybe in my area. We could maybe talk about like current events or something. We could talk about maybe you guys, someone occasionally I get a really interesting email I think is worth sharing with you guys. Maybe I came across something interesting on the internet that I just want to talk about. A lot of times I'll call my girlfriend up on the phone and I'll just tell her in the most exciting way I know, the most passionate way I know how to tell somebody something I just learned that's really, really interesting. And a lot of times she's like, yeah, that's cool, but God, can I get a word in? And, I think this would be a nice outlet for that. And then also, every couple weeks, I just get all kinds of questions from you guys or all kinds of comments. And I go through every 2 weeks, I kind of let it go for a little bit. And then I'll come back after 2 weeks have gone by, answer everybody's questions on the weekend. If I get a free weekend, that's what I'll do. I'll take really about like an hour to 2 hours answering everybody's questions in the last 2 weeks. I figured, while I do that, I might as well film me answering these questions, because these questions, I feel like some of them are so good and they can apply to everybody rather than just that particular person. So I just think this is a valuable thing that I should be doing for not just for me, but for you guys. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do that every 2 weeks, or maybe every week. And if you have a name for this kind of thing, I don't know what to call it yet, but it'd be nice to have some kind of intro, I guess, some kind of more professional thing, kind of make this in more of a podcast form, which I think would be pretty cool. I've always wanted to do a podcast, but I don't know. I think I'd make it more about comedy rather than something informative like gardening. But it's a commitment. So anyway, guys, let's talk about these questions real quick and anything else I want to go over in this video. You guys kind of get the format, and then we'll go over kind of what I just said again at the end. So Julie here, she said, isn't that straw going to prevent the rain in the forecast from getting down into the roots of the tree? I've always been told to water my plants and trees very well before I put down mulch. You seem to go about things differently, and she's interested to know why I did it this way. And she's referring to this video here, this considerations when planting trees video that I did. Okay, so this video here we did recently. If you haven't seen it, I think you should watch it because it's really a nice video. I'm really proud of this one. And it's nice to be able to have someone like my girlfriend film this for me so that I can kind of freely talk to you guys without having to hold a camera and think about an angle or think about something else. So, but in this video, I mentioned when I'm planting this tree, I mentioned the fact that I'm not watering my trees after I put them in the ground. In this particular time in which I planted it, there was a lot of rain in the forecast. We had at least an inch coming in. It's the fall. This is something that really depends on where you live, and I can't disagree with what she says in the fact that it is a really good idea, and I wouldn't disagree with you should water your trees and plants in after you plant them. It's just for me, and I answer it here in this thing here, in this response, I just don't see a huge benefit for me. It's just an extra step that seems a bit unnecessary for the current conditions of my climate. Now, to answer her first question, would the rain penetrate through the straw to then get into the soil? Well, if it's a light rain, probably not. If it's a very light drizzle, no. But if it's an inch of rain, you bet that rain's going to penetrate into the soil. Since I planted these trees, it's been very, very cool. We've gotten lots of rain in my climate, guys, um, you know, we just get rain all year. It doesn't stop. The ground's almost always moist. You know, I haven't, to put this in perspective here, I haven't watered my potted plants, a single potted plant, even my 1 gallon smaller trees. I haven't watered them since September 1st. It's now October 6th, which is, by the way, the day of the McGregor versus Khabib fight. So, you know, sure, if you guys, some of you guys have no idea what I'm talking about, but others, if you know what I'm talking about and you're interested in that, cheers to you guys. But anyway, excited to see that fight. But the point I'm trying to make is that I haven't watered my trees, my potted trees, since September 1st. In fact, I could leave that tree, Julie, that I planted in that video, that American Persimmon that I was standing right next to. I could leave that in a pot, you know, not in the ground, without any straw. I could leave that in a pot and just let it sit there for the entirety of the fall, the entirety of the winter, and most of the spring. In fact, this year, because we had a wet spring, I didn't water a single potted plant until June 1st. So really, only from June 1st to September 1st did I even need to water my potted plants, which is a bit insane. And nothing in the ground, absolutely not a single tree, plant, shrub, anything, seedling, nothing, did I need to water this year in the ground. Unless it was in a raised bed, I should say that. Because the raised bed is basically a container. So, yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at, is that if you kind of look at it in a different way, and I say that to her, is that, you know, let's just say it was in a pot. I wouldn't have to water it. So, in terms of, would this be a bad idea to water your trees in? No, it's not a bad idea. I recommend it. You know, but like I said, for my climate, I just don't see any benefit. The only benefit that there is to watering in your trees that I hear of, other than just reducing transplant shock, is to get rid of the air pockets in the soil, kind of get that tree to settle in better, which in my mind kind of compacts this. Well, I don't know. I guess there is a nice benefit of having air pockets. You know, I'd rather have air pockets than not. You know, I'd rather have a loose, less compacted soil. Not that the rain or the water would compact the soil too much, but it just doesn't seem like a whole huge benefit to me to go over to the hose, bring that 100 feet away, water it in, and then bring it back another 100 feet for very little benefit. So, call me lazy, but all my trees get the same treatment and nothing's died. So anyway, the next question I want to talk about is from April here. And she says she's planning on setting up a mini orchard at the bottom of her garden. 3 apples, 3 plums. Interesting choices. But I was going to use a tree stake to support them while getting established. Do you bother with this? Absolutely do I bother with this. Every single tree that I've ever grown from a smaller size has always been staked. The only reason, April, in this video that I did not stake this tree right next to me here, you can see me and here's the tree. The only reason I haven't done that is because it's already been staked. It already established itself as a strong tree. Now, persimmons, and this is going to happen, I think, at some point in the future. Persimmons are lanky trees, man. I don't know what it is about them, but I had a persimmon. I have a persimmon in the front, Rosianka, and Rosianka grew and grew and grew. I mean, I feed my trees so well. The soil's so nutritious. The location's great for this tree. The thing just grew in just every which direction. And the persimmons, the way they grow is they have these really lanky arms. And we had a storm, a really bad storm, that knocked my persimmon tree over completely on the ground. It kind of uprooted itself a little bit, and the trunk of the tree was literally on the ground. And this was like a tree that has been planted in the ground for 2 years. So this is its 3rd year in the ground. Last year this happened. In its second year in the ground, it uprooted itself and fell over. And the only reason it did that is because the persimmon is a very lanky tree. I feel like it doesn't seem all that strong. So in the future with persimmons specifically, I will stake them when they get some size to them. I'll put a T-post in the ground, and you will bet your money that I will tie that tree up pretty tight to that stake, because I don't want that tree. I don't want that situation to happen again. I would have had boatloads of fruit this year on my persimmon if it wasn't for that happening. So I think that answers your question. I mean, every little tree, 100%. I should make a video on this topic. It's a really good question. Okay, so Paul, he asked, and this is crazy how they're just in a row like this. Really great questions back to back. And it's weird how it's on this video, I think. There's just certain videos that bring on better questions, I think, than other videos. But Paul said, absolutely, in terms of not mulching around the bark. One of the tips I mentioned was do not mulch around the bark because it will rot the bark. And he says you're inviting borers to invade young and susceptible trees. I learned that the hard way, and I'm a wood chip guy. I also feel better about planting my Asian pears in part shade now, because in the video I have an Asian pear and a European pear planted in about 5 hours of light. What are the varieties you're growing, Ross? I'm also curious why you chose an American persimmon over an Asian persimmon. Well, Paul, great point about the wood chips. I'm a wood chip guy myself. I love wood chips. I love mulch. I love to pile that stuff up around the base of my trees, and it's really a bad habit. The only time in which I would ever do this, and I'm debating whether or not I'm going to do it this winter, but in previous winters I've protected my younger, more thinner wood fig trees in the ground because they're so sensitive to the cold, and adding in that extra layer of mulch around the base will protect the base, make sure the tree comes back year after year that way. I will probably do that to a couple trees that I want to just protect the base. The problem with that last year when I did this is that I used straw on some of the trees. Straw is different than wood chips. I've also used leaves in the past. Leaves I think work well, wood chips work well, but straw I think holds moisture better than wood chips. It also takes longer to dry, whereas wood chips have more air that gets through there and they dry quicker, thereby drying the bark of the tree, and it's not really constantly wet. You could have a wet winter, depending on where you live, and you could have straw that doesn't dry very quickly. So it's not really a great idea, but it is a definite way of protecting your trees in the wintertime. So that's really the only scenario I would do that. I did kill a grapevine, I believe, doing it this way this year. So I think I killed a grapevine putting a whole bunch of wood chips around the base of it this past winter. He also mentions about the borers. The borers are a great example of another reason why you shouldn't do it. Creating an ecosystem for certain things is really not a good idea. You also create an ecosystem for voles. And voles, a type of rodent, will come in there. They will live in those wood chips, dig around in those wood chips, and they'll eat the bark right off your trees and kill the tree. So, not a great idea. Then again, I love wood chips, so it's good to have wood chips. Just make sure they're kind of away from the trunk. That's pretty much it. I know there's a lot of controversy on that topic, and I've literally been on one side of the argument, and now I'm on the argument I just said. So I've pretty much changed my viewpoint, and I'm open to hear another side of the argument again to go back. But I think right now I'm pretty much settled in where I stand on that topic. Another question that I was asked, and this is on Facebook, so you can ask me questions, guys, through email. You can do it through Facebook. I would recommend doing it through YouTube, because if you comment on YouTube, it helps me out. If you ask me a question here on Facebook, it doesn't help me out in any form. my YouTube channel grows by you guys asking questions and commenting on my videos. But my friend John, I'm happy to help John. I'm happy to help anybody, you know. But John said, hey Ross, can Violet de Bordeaux be planted in the ground here? He lives in Pennsylvania as well. The short answer to that question is yes, but you have to give it the best spot you possibly can give it. Plant it up against a structure, some kind of wall. You know, put lots of rocks, maybe surround it by concrete, boulders, brick, stones, anything you can do to cover that thing, protect that base, man, and give it a lot of heat. It's a mid-season variety, so it'll ripen in time. But if it dies back all the way to the ground, the chances of it fruiting from the base that year is much lower. And you would need a tree that's at least 4 years old in the ground to probably reliably do that every year. But he said he purchased this Violet de Bordeaux, and it doesn't look like the pics that he's seen of Violet de Bordeaux. And I agree. I asked him, you know, who does it come from? He said Wellspring Gardens, I believe, is what he meant to say. And he's saying they all have spade-shaped leaves. And he says it's from a root culture, but I think he means tissue culture. So that's, you know, interesting, right? Because you could see this spade-shaped leaf here. Violet de Bordeaux historically doesn't have spade-shaped leaves. So it can. It certainly can. It's just uncommon. And it's unlikely to have an entire tree of Violet de Bordeaux with entirely spade-shaped leaves. That's uncommon. Usually you have one branch that has spade-shaped leaves, another branch with another different leaf pattern, another branch with a different leaf pattern. In fact, there was a guy on our figs this year, my friend Phil, who posted photos of 3 different leaf patterns that were all pretty much Violet de Bordeaux. I think someone else did it as well, if I'm not mistaken. So you can have this leaf pattern on here, John, for sure. And I think it's unlikely, like I said, to have that leaf pattern on the entire tree. But if you get your trees from Wellspring Gardens and they're tissue cultured, they kind of revert back to a state of immaturity. And they take a while to get their true leaves. They take a while to fruit. They like to just grow and grow and grow. They usually have a lot of vigor, whereas most Violet de Bordeaux have some form of fig mosaic virus, which probably slows down the growth just enough to change the leaf pattern, right? But because your tree is so healthy, it has a lot of vigor, the leaf pattern's changed, it's probably in some kind of state of immaturity. I think it's likely that that is in fact Violet de Bordeaux. In fact, I think it's even more likely because if you look at every fig tree that that Wellspring Gardens sells, you look at every single one of them, Violet de Bordeaux is the only one that could potentially even have spade-shaped leaves. So there's a lot to that question, but I literally think that's probably the best answer you're going to get. I think it actually is Violet de Bordeaux, even though it certainly doesn't look like it from first glance. So, hey, let it fruit. Then you'll know for sure. But I do understand, you know, you trying to figure this out now because you find out years later your tree isn't right. It's kind of upsetting. So, anyway, guys, that is the video. Oh, no, we have one more comment. Okay, so I missed this one by Paul. I forgot to answer the rest of this. So, Paul, you asked me about planting Asian persimmons in shade. Yes, I'm glad you answered that. You asked that because in my spreadsheet, there's a link to this, guys, in every single video I've ever put out. There's a spreadsheet in here about partial shade crops. This lists every fruit you can grow in partial shade and every vegetable you can grow in partial shade. Now it's going to differ depending on where you live. If I lived in Maine, I wouldn't really want to plant things in partial shade because you have such a short growing season in Maine. The sun's not very strong. Even here it's not really that strong. You know, it's a bit of a risk. Your tree will certainly grow. It will certainly be happy. but you may not get the fruit size you're looking for, and you may not get the quantity of fruit you're looking for. So it's the same thing with all these other vegetables, right? You plant a carrot in partial shade, you may not get the right size carrot you want, but you can do it. He also asked here, Paul asked, what varieties am I growing? Well, I'm glad you asked me that, Paul, because the sheet right next to the partial shade crops is every single fruit tree I'm growing. And this is every single pear here. Now, this is not updated, it's not current, but every pear here that I'm growing is indeed current. Actually, it's not. I lied. But the majority of these I grew or have grown or currently am growing. He also asked me, I'm curious why you chose an American persimmon over an Asian persimmon. I didn't. That's just what I have. And knowing what I know now, I probably would have stuck with all Asian persimmons. I ordered a few American persimmons from nurseries a couple years ago. I'm not sorry that I did, but I've tried many persimmons now. The Americans I've tried the Asian persimmons. Seijo is the very best one, and that's what it means, and it is. It even competes with some of my figs. American persimmons, sorry, they kind of have a Clorox taste to them when they're shipped, maybe if they're overripe. When they're underripe, they have a very astringent taste to them. You don't want to eat that. But I did eat one last weekend that was off a friend's tree in Connecticut, and he had some that were perfectly ripe. I got to eat one that was perfect, and it tasted just as good as an Asian persimmon. So I think there may be a sweet spot. Maybe it was the fact that the only Americans I've tried prior were shipped to me. I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see what my American persimmons do for me and where I need to pick them to get them to taste good. Because there's tons of people out there that love American persimmons, and that's all they can grow. So do those people just like eating Clorox? I don't think so. So there must be good American persimmons. Anyway, guys, that wraps up the video. I just want to reiterate that, again, we're going to be doing things like this almost every week. Comment on the videos, guys. If you have questions, and I think it's an interesting question I can expand upon that a lot of you guys can benefit from, I'll answer that in a video just like this, and we'll try to do this every week. Something that I came across that was interesting, some piece of news, whether it's an announcement or maybe it's a current event, maybe I got an interesting email, whatever it is. Just make sure you guys are letting me know, and if you want me to feature that in your video, then I'll be happy to do that. So anyway, guys, that was the video. If you can think of a name for this, what we're gonna do, and if you have a day that you prefer me to do this and a time you prefer me to do this, let me know. I think I may do this sometime during the week, and we'll do like a bit of a series, every Thursday at 9 or something. So, all right, guys, I'll talk to you all soon, and take care.